Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Faiyaz. How are you?
Alaikum salam. How's it going, Zahra?
Today we're joined by Sheikh Faiyaz. Sheikh Faiyaz is the associate chaplain and research scholar at NYU. He is also the a very vocal figure with his podcast, Shaking It Up with Sheikh Faiyaz, doing amazing stuff in the community today. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
The first question I have for you, and this relates to our topic. Our topic today is American Muslim identity. This is a very, we're one of the most diverse communities in America. We're definitely a minority, a very small minority, but a very diverse minority at that. What is the American Muslim identity?
I mean, it's a really good question, and I think when you take a look at statistics, first of all, you see that Muslims in America are certainly the most diverse minority group in the country. Muslims amount to be approximately 3 to 5% of the population within the United States, which goes, 1 to 3%, which is anywhere between 3 and maybe 5 million Muslims. And obviously, that number is more populated in certain larger cities, like the Northeast here in New York, Chicago, California, in Michigan, Detroit, the greater Detroit area, and so on. And then, in addition to the fact that the numbers are scattered and populated in certain demographics, that idea of cultural diversity is something really important to think about. There are Muslims from all across the world who have been born and raised over here, who have migrated here from different parts of the world. And I think one thing that is really key is that statistics, they demonstrate that close to 30% of Muslims in America are actually black. And they have been here since the transatlantic slave trade. So we're
And one of
talking
the
for
oldest, basically, one of the oldest communities in America,
Yeah,
if I'm not
absolutely, absolutely. And I think when people create a picture of what a Muslim looks like, many a time, a Muslim in America, especially when you take a look at pop culture, media, so on, it's very, very different than actually the reality on the ground. Most people, when they see or when they picture Muslim in their mind, or they turn on their TV and they see the villain on ABC's like new primetime TV show or whatever it might be, it's probably a guy who looks like you or I, brown skin, large beard. We're in quarantine, so we can't shave or trim it. We don't have access to barbers. Or a woman who is brown skin wearing a headscarf. When again, that doesn't necessarily speak to the diversity of the Muslim community in this country.
That brings up a question in my mind, is that after, I would say, maybe the first Gulf War, or even as late as 9/11, did that image kind of change? Because in the 50s and 60s, you had this really strong Muslim identity of African American Muslims, all these different organizations that represented that identity. Do you think that changed after the first Gulf War? When did that change actually happen?
I'm not exactly sure, to be honest with you, when that change happened. But I think that if you go and take a look at, you know, pop culture, movies, TV shows, and so on, there's historically been this painting of a picture that sort of isolates and makes Muslims the bad guy. That is sort of coupled with the image that is often also presented in movies and TV shows that those with dark skin, especially those who are black, have also been the bad guy. You take a look at a show like Cops. That show is still on TV till today. Which, what picture does it create except for white police officers taking black people out of cars and beating them, right? Again, it creates this villain sort of mold. And I think that's something very, very dangerous. And I think for someone who's a Muslim like myself, who has had certain, experiences in airports and so on in the post 9/11 world, I still can't speak for what it is like to be black in this country,
Right.
And then sort of with this idea of double marginalities, being a black Muslim, where you get isolated by the larger Muslim community many a time. I think it's something really, really telling of kind of like where we're at. And that's sort of completely a different side point. But, I'm not exactly sure when that transition took place. But, that sort of bombardment of imaging in terms of creating like this, anti sort of status quo or this very villain type figure has been anyone who's the other, right? Anyone who's different, right? It becomes back like this idea of othering of certain minority groups in this country, which pop culture, media, American politicians have been notorious for, since its inception in history.
One of the earlier points that you mentioned was, our diversity, and we were talking about our diversity as a small community. How are we taking advantage ourselves of the diversity that we have in America of Muslims?
Well, I think that we have a strength that is our diversity, and being someone who is a minority of a minority, right? I'm a Muslim. I'm a Shia Muslim, right? I don't know if we actually take and utilize our diversity as the strength that it actually has the potential, and capacity to be. We don't utilize the difference in cultural rituals and traditions, across the board within our own Shia community, but even more so like within the broader Muslim community to like really make an impact, right? When you talk about, what has the potential and the capacity to make differences in this part of the world, it's often numbers, right? It's why we focus so much on voting. We focus on grassroots initiatives. We focus on power, and power is controlled by numbers. It's just the reality of kind of where we're at. Now, when we talk about, maybe 3 million Muslims all across the country, someone who's, outside of sort of the Muslim bubble doesn't know the difference between Shia and Sunni. Again, they create an image like virtually like on their eye of what a Muslim looks like. Now, if we demonstrate and we show that we are numbers when it comes toward doing meaningful work, right? When it comes to mobilizing politically, when it comes towards social services that we have the potential to offer, orphans, widows, homeless, unemployment rates right now are sort of skyrocketed and reached all these all-time highs in the post sort of, coronavirus world, And I think that, when we are projecting our diversity, utilizing our numbers to make a difference, then there's opportunity for growth. So I would say that it is a strength, but I feel like, we probably haven't tapped into it where we need to, yet.
What would be that watershed moment that would cause us to be, more more not, I would say, united, or just capitalizing on this diversity that we have?
I think we've had so many opportunities. I mean, I think we've had so many, and I think it's getting better. And I think that there is like room for sort of optimism. You take a look like post 9/11, right? That was one of those moments. Post Trump, right? 2016 Muslim ban, travel ban. That was another moment, right? And I think that the moment that we're in right now is the faith community generally, more broadly, with all of the with all of the challenges that people in this country are facing financially, health wise, and so on. We have another opportunity, but it's about really whether we're going to be able to utilize and really sort of mobilize and work together toward doing like impactful things. So I think that we need to keep on pushing that envelope, especially those who are born and raised in this country, and who can sort of isolate maybe those cultural, geopolitical sort of challenges that we as a Muslim community across the world has faced, and sort of understand that polemically and theologically I can believe what I want to believe and you can believe what you want to believe. We also have the opportunity to like grow, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And do meaningful work, because at the end of the day, like we do have a lot in common,
Exactly.
And that does not mean that we have to all of a sudden give up our values. I'm not
Right.
saying that at all. And I'm speaking sort of from my role as like as a faith leader within a faith capacity. Like I have certain convictions, that lead me to understand my life and my religion and my faith, and that I want to raise my family with, and I'm not willing to negotiate those things, and that's fine. But I think that where we have a faith tradition that is sort of foundational on values, mercy, compassion, generosity, beauty, love, justice, and so on. And if we're able to mobilize ourselves, under those main themes and those qualities and those sort of sublime values, we're going to be a lot better off.
We're in the midst of one of those watershed moments, right? Like I've seen some amazing responses by local organizers, or just everyday people that attend a masjid for their own community, right? There have been every masjid out there is doing a grocery service. There are other bigger organizations doing much larger stuff, but they're also kind of located in a single community or a single region. It's not like for the whole Muslim, identity of America, right? Like it's not for all Muslims out there. Why are we so laser focused on like, okay, I'm gonna help, and my reach is only up until my mosque. Like the you know, it's not going beyond that. It's just okay. I'm gonna help people in my community that attend my mosque, and that's it. And I, I'm not looking beyond those horse blinders of there's other communities out there for me to help.
I mean, first of all, I think it's probably natural. I don't think it's that problematic. You know, we tend to, you know, firstly look out for our families, right, and then like our very direct sort of communities, and then sort of we're like building capacity that way. And I think it's normal. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think that when we do have the capacity though to do more, we shouldn't limit ourselves to that. You know.
Yep.
So I don't want to be, you know, personally, you know, critical of communities that are looking out for themselves because it's normal, right? You have to do that first. And because, you know, take a look at it, right, Zahir, like we have so many needs, right, you know, and we have responsibilities because so many people have needs, and then we're going to be held accountable, you know, within our religious tradition. We believe that, you know, you should not, you know, eat, you know, to your full capacity when your neighbor is hungry, right?
Yep.
And like that God's going to ask me tomorrow, why were you eating when your neighbor was starving, you know?
Yep.
And that is something that we need to start thinking about. And I'm not saying it like in a sort of, you know, holier than thou sort of way. And you know me, and I hope you didn't take it that way. But like, you know, I have to look at myself first, right? What am I doing to like give out of myself? What am I
Yeah.
doing to be at the service of others? And I think that, you know, when we have humbling, blessed sort of moments like these that give us that opportunity, we don't want to lose sight of it. So, you know, I think that if there are opportunities where we have that, you know, potential to, you know, do impactful things on a broader scale, you know, we have to make sure that we're sort of jumping on that, inshallah. And I think, you know, again, there are, you know, I know our center is running a, you know, very large campaign to support families who have been impacted by, you know, COVID-19, you know, in New York City, you know, not segregating it to Muslims, right? We're not interested in Shia, we're not interested in Sunni, we're interested in helping families impacted locally, right? Naturally locally, because that's the constituency that we serve here in New York City, right? If we could do it broadly across the country, that would be wonderful. But again, we have to limit to sort of what we have sort of within our reach. And you know, it's a very sort of humbling experience to be able to, you know, try our best to really make an impact, you know, in families' lives, inshallah.
I mean that's a great point, right? Like and the example that you just gave of you guys at NYU doing that for the local New York community. I'm thinking back over my actions over the last month and a half or so, and thinking, okay, you know, we put on a couple of milads online, a couple of you know, virtual milads and stuff for Shaban. We've done the grocery drive and this, that, and the other, but it's all been local. And I think you're right. Um, but my other question, the other side of that is um, all these different initiatives are happening in their own regions, and they're being very effective, and I think all the best of intentions are behind every single one of them. But how do we make sure that, you know, a mosque in Kansas is not running low on resources, or, you know, a mosque in Louisiana, they may not have access to all these different things that a mosque in New Jersey or New York has access to? How can we kind of keep an eye or train ourselves to kind of be to recognize those issues?
I think it's, first of all, as individuals, we have to know kind of what our limitations are as individuals. And then, alhamdulillah, I think that our community, you know, at least, you know, like within the Shia community, has, you know, certain resources and certain governing bodies, right? Like Imam Mahdi Association of Marjiyya, or like, you know, like Nisimco, or like other sort of larger bodies that are well connected and integrated to sort of create like sort of this system of hierarchy. Not hierarchy in order to demonstrate that we are on top of you, but in a way to
Absolutely.
keep communities sort of like on the same page, be uniform when it comes towards certain points that need to be disseminated, you know, to the community, for instance.
Yep.
Or something which is like super important, I think is the most important sort of manifestation of these, you know, larger governing bodies or larger organizations, is that there's a very sort of seemingly like very like clean, you know, opportunity to like virtually network and communicate, right?
Yep.
So when a
It's a great
smaller
point.
community needs something in the middle of Idaho or Kansas or God knows
Right.
where, right, Ohio or like wherever
Yep.
people are listening to from, with all due respect, right,
Yeah.
like we don't have to, we're not often concerned like with what's happening there, but we know that there are other organizations that are,
Yeah.
and that they will reach out to us and they will, create the campaigns necessary toward being, hopefully at their support, right? And I think that that's something super important, for us to also keep in mind. But it's a really, really good question, because obviously the first thing our minds are gonna go to is like what's happening next to me,
Right.
and again, I would say that that is the most important
Yep.
responsibility. But then, from there, we're able to sort of, we're able to grow, inshallah.
So coming back from this COVID thing to back to a more general conversation, how are we? How is the American Muslim impacting American culture, in your opinion?
How is the American Muslim impacting American
American
culture?
culture.
That's
Yep.
a good question. I think, it's important to understand that, first of all, that an American Muslim like is from America, right?
Yep.
So, are we impacting the culture by sort of, establishing Sharia law and bringing jihad to like the United States? Like, no, right? I think that, what is something so beautiful like about this country, or at least, the potential like of this country again, or just the, the beauty of any region or of any community, again, goes back to that point that I mentioned earlier, is this idea of diversity. As long as we're able to learn from it, God speaks to that in the Quran,
Yep.
that He creates us into man and women, and into nation and into tribe, lita'arafu, so that we can come to know and learn about one another. Because
Yep.
knowing about one another and recognizing the differences in someone's skin color, language, or culture, or whatever it might be, is an opportunity to actually like know our Creator. Because all of these are manifestations and reflections of the signs of our Creator. So I think that if we, as believers, understand that, we have, an opportunity to, utilize our faith tradition, our spirituality, to make an impact toward, serving humanity, for instance, right? Serving God, and at the same time
Yep.
serving humanity by virtue of our relationship with God, then we're like utilizing our religion in a way that's impactful. You know what I'm saying? And I think that, we need to be at the forefront in building the clinics and building domestic violence shelters and building the
Yep.
orphanages, or, supporting people in need, because that's what our religion teaches us. You know what I'm saying? And I think there's so many examples of that, like all across the country, where you see kind of Muslims at the forefront. And then also there's places where, there's always room for improvement, and I think that we'll hopefully be able to reach that very, very soon. And I pray that, God blesses us with that sort of opportunity to be of service, and be of help to others, inshallah.
Is there any examples of American Muslims impacting American culture that you can kind of think of?
I mean, I think you take a look at so many, individuals and institutions. Someone like Sister Najah Bazi, Zaman International, right? Like the incredible, humanitarian work, that she's doing. You have an organization like, Comfort Aid International, right? That goes out and, raises money and like is building schools and orphanages in Afghanistan and in Yemen, all across the world, doing impactful work, West Africa,
Yep.
East Africa, so on. So you talk about, you see here are a couple. When you talk about, institutions like, CUNY Clear locally here in New York City.
Yep.
Immigration lawyers who are making a difference and really helping people sort of in this really, really trying, difficult time, who are doing impactful work, pre 9/11 and pre sort of 2016 Trump election, even more so like thereafter. And then even like the community organizations, like the local mosque and the local Islamic center. And then even on a more smaller sort of grassroots level, the individuals who are going out and making impact, in people's lives. I can say, give you countless examples of people who I know personally right here in New York City, who are utilizing their career like goals and skills, but then, sort of transferring like maybe the wealth that they gain toward like, being so philanthropic and making
Right.
sort of real, grassroots sort of impact. So I think, alhamdulillah, we have amazing talent, and mechanisms to, create those social services, and we're going to continue to do those things, inshallah, and hopefully again we're able to build, and learn from what they have already done.
And I would also add, Sheikh Faiyaz, that if you're not one of those people that you mentioned, or not involved in those organizations that you mentioned, by just being an active citizen, just by going out and voting, just being a law-abiding citizen, a credit to society, basically just following your deen, the teachings of our deen, you're kind of impacting the culture, right? You're being a contributive member of society, and I think that goes far beyond than anything else, because there's such a stigma, as we talked about earlier, against Muslims in general, that the more examples we have of like active, vibrant members of society out there, the better brand we're gonna have at the end of the day, right?
And again, like we don't want to limit ourselves to just also doing the day to day, right?
Right.
Because that definitely helps shift the narrative. There's creates a sense of normalcy of Muslims, or quote unquote. Um, but I think like more than that, like what more are we doing? What impactful work are we doing? Right? You don't have to be part of an organization to do impactful work, right?
Right.
You could be making an impact in your neighbor's life. You
Yep.
can make an impact, in the people that you work with and the people that you go to school with.
Yep.
Um, and again, you derive that from like your religious values and your spiritual tradition. We have the best of sort of role models. We have the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have his family, Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, right? And utilizing them as sort of our our
North
role
Star.
models. Yeah, exactly, right. And taking the necessary strive to being successful, and making a difference. I think we have more than enough resources. It's just about us to sort of implement.
The other side of that is, how are we adapting to American culture, right? Your family's been here for a long time. My family's been here for about a little over 20 years now. How are you, how is your family on a personal level, as well as the Muslim community at large, adapting American cultural values into our way of life?
I mean, that's also like another tough question, right? Because like, what is it? What is like American like cultural values, right? Again, we've been in this country, Muslims in general, have been in this country for since the transatlantic slave trade. If we talk about like specifically like our communities or like my community or my family, you know,
Yep.
I am like a first generation, Muslim American. My parents were immigrants to this country. My wife was not born in this country, but she came here when she was like very young. I think when I take a look at like my children, at the end of the day, like I'm most concerned like about their religious values, right? And sort of like their connection to like their religion, their spiritual tradition, and religious community, because all these things are like super important to me. Um, I was born over here, right? Like what does it mean when we talk about like American sort of culture? Um, Obviously, anything that is like that like I like to eat like American food, right? I like to eat pizza, like I like to eat steak,
Yeah.
like whatever it might be. Um, but at the same time, I have like my own religious sort of code of conduct and values,
Yep.
and like that's hopefully what I'm able to like pass down to like my children, you know because what, no matter what, no matter how like perfect New York accent English that they're speaking,
Right.
their names are Zainab and Maryam. They have brown skin. They're gonna get treated differently one day. Hopefully, I'm able to cover and shade that from them. As long as I possibly can. But they're going to be seen as different than those who are around them. And so if they have like the confidence that they derive from their religious tradition and value, I'm optimistic that they'll be believers, and they'll be sort of contributors, to serving their religion, to serving their communities. But at the same time, like also, feel comfortable and confident enough to be with others who are different than them, and they're hopefully able to also defend their values and defend their beliefs.
I feel like for people that, one of the first things that I noticed going through, like, I came here when I was 12 years old, and kind of like thinking back on my experiences, kind of coming into this country as a 12-year-old and going through high school and then college, and just the some of the questions that I would get would be like, do you celebrate Thanksgiving? Like, what do you eat on Thanksgiving? well, we don't like turkey, but like I'll have a biryani, or like my mom will make a chicken, but we're not gonna have a turkey because we just don't eat turkey.
Right.
But we're appreciative of Thanksgiving. Like, okay, I have a bunch of my friends from mosque come together on football Sundays, or the Super Bowl. Like, I feel like those kinds of
Of course,
things.
we're boycotting the NFL after calling Trump out. Of course.
Of course. But that's those kind of things are what matter, I guess, as the American culture almost. And I think for people that are not familiar with who an American Muslim is, those those practices kind of humanize an individual for them, and say, you know what, I can relate to this person, and I can bring this person into my life, and they're not another anymore. It's more of a one-on-one personal relationship than it would have
Yeah.
been otherwise.
Oh yeah, I hear you. Yeah, yeah. And I think again, it's also important to keep in mind this idea of sort of kind of like culture, right? Like you said, like versus like religion, right? So like, how many friends do I have or members of my community who are like from who are like converts? They grew up over here. Their families have been here for centuries.
Yep.
And so they're used to celebrating Christmas. They're used to
Yep.
celebrating like these things mean something to them. Where when my parents came to this country, that's when the first time that they were exposed to it. Yeah, so like Thanksgiving is like our favorite holiday, right? We don't eat turkey either, man. We eat some sort of other dishes, other cuisines. We're gonna take benefit from all the holidays that we get, but we don't necessarily understand like what they mean, right?
Yeah.
For sure, right? We use it to travel and whatnot. But again, at the same time, as long as it doesn't give up sort of what your religious value is, what I'm trying to say. So I think for so many of us, I think that we're hopefully able to balance that, and have like members or converts who come and say, what's like the legal ruling, can I go and celebrate Christmas? Yeah, like you should. Like you that's like when your family like has like a really important holiday, you need to be with your family. This is kind of what our religion teaches us. It doesn't say like these things are forbidden.
Right.
A lot of people ask like questions around like Valentine's Day, right? Like, can I if you're not doing anything forbidden, right? You're taking like your wife out for dinner, or like buying her some chocolates, we should be doing that. That's
Yeah.
kind of like what our religious tradition teaches us. To
Right.
like create like a system, of like real like love and friendship and so on, and not again, as long as things are done within Islamic law, you're not doing it with someone who's not your spouse. That's something a different story.
Yeah, and I think that brings up an interesting point, right? And that was going to be my next question for you, is that, for your audience, and I feel like people that are either like myself, who's about, I got married 2 years ago, started hoping to start a family soon. Like, how am I going to deal with the scenario of, and mashallah, you have, Zainab and Miriam that are probably at that stage as well. Like, all right, well, they're gonna see all this Christmas and Halloween and Easter stuff going on TV. How do I deal with that? Do I have a Christmas tree in my house? Do I allow my daughters or sons to like wear a costume for Halloween and go trick or treating? Is that gonna be like, do I bat an eye at that? Is that just like part of our culture, and then just
I think you create alternatives, right?
Like, and again, you decide what you want to do, right? I'm not going to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
But like, we try to create alternatives like in our household, right? So like during the month of Ramadan, I don't know when this is going to be broadcasted, maybe during Ramadan. So if you're listening during Ramadan, we're a couple of days before. And we already are like getting ready, to like put up like Ramadan lights and put Ramadan decorations like all across the house. And like during Eid is going to be really festive, whether we're at home or whether with family, it doesn't matter. Like Ramadan is really important to us. During Muharram, like we're gonna like put a black flag that says Ya Hussein, to like keep like the culture of what's really important and that religious symbolism. In addition to that, during the birth of the Prophet, during the birth of Imam Ali, Sayyidah Zahra, Imam Hassan, Hussein, every one of the Imams, like we get a cake or we get a cupcake, so we sing happy birthday, you know what I'm saying? Because then they have an alternative, We don't need to make things boring, Religion of Islam is not rigid, like in any way. In fact, what's really, really beautiful is we have this idea of, honoring the signs of God in a way, that's orfi, so to say. And you and I, Zahir, have had a lot of conversations like about this, especially when it comes to like Muharram rituals and so on, and how we can, that's for another discussion perhaps. But what are we doing again to like create an alternative so my kids like, they're not concerned with what other people have, but like they're able to like embrace their own religious sort of, tradition. Like they get enough of that, so they're already looking forward to like the next birthday party, right? They know that like on the 15th of Ramadan is like the birth of Imam Hassan, grandson of
Yep.
the Messenger of God, and they know they're gonna get some cake, and they're gonna
Yeah.
like have fun with it. They know that like on Friday night we're gonna be putting up like all of our Ramadan light decorations and so on. So I think you're able to sort of weave and utilize kind of like what is done,
Right.
elsewhere where we might not have practiced it culturally like when you and I were young and when we were growing up. But like I grew up over here. I experienced what that was like when I saw what other people were having and like I wasn't having it. And we don't want our kids to feel that way, in
Right.
any way. But I think like every generation and every community, like our parents, myself, like my kids might feel like they're gonna have to like make and adapt to like to their time, and to try to figure out how I'm able to like pass down again the faith tradition, the embracement of our religion and our love for the Prophet and his family, peace and blessings be upon them, in a way that's really I don't know the word, but like where they really, really embrace it. That's
Right.
that's the most important thing to me personally. Like as a father, that's the most important thing to me. As in my as a faith leader, right? In
Right.
my capacity, I want to make sure that people like have that and they don't let go of that, because when they let go of that, I think they let go of everything.
And I think, my sister, alhamdulillah, she has 3 kids right now. And she's basically talked to her kids and like, listen, instead of one Christmas, you're getting 14 Christmases,
Hmm.
right? And that's the trade-off that you have, where like you might not get a gift on 25th of December, but you're getting cake and you're getting to celebrate 14 other times during the year. And that's the trade-off that they've made. And
Also
and
celebrate the birth of Jesus, man. No worries.
that's true too. I don't remember exactly if they do that on the 25th of December or not, but I have no idea. But what they have done, and I get all these WhatsApps from her. She lives in Houston, so I get all these WhatsApps from her. Especially in Shaban, there's a cake every other day.
Yeah.
So like the kids are just running around on sugar all month long.
Mhm.
Kind of bringing that conversation, kind of rounding it out now. I think in the Muslim world altogether, I feel like American Muslims are probably the most diverse community out there. I don't know. I don't have any stats or figures to kind of say that. I'm just going off of my experience. How are we kind of educating, or what is the opportunity for us to educate the larger Muslim world on how we're able to coexist, alhamdulillah, without much incident here, and kind of communicate that to the larger Muslim world?
So I think, when we talk about, sharing our values or sharing our tradition, it doesn't always have to be within the frame of like proselytizing our faith, first of all. I think a
Right.
lot of people, they believe that, like we have to like go out and like, convert everyone to Islam and so on.
Yep.
I don't think we have to do that. I think that, we have an opportunity to share kind of our religious values by means of, again, the spirituality, the inspiration, the motivation that we gain, from our masters, from our teachers, from the Quran, from the
Yep.
Prophet, from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. In a line from Ali Allah, he states, "Lo arafu mahasin kalamina la habbuna," right? That if people knew the beauty of our words, they would love us. Like we have these amazing, again, personalities to walk in their footsteps and to emulate their actions and their character. Like now we need to utilize the inspiration and like go out and like make a difference. You know what I'm trying to
Yep.
say? Going back to that idea. So let's go and take that, tradition of ours. Let's go and take the beauty of what we learn from our religion and like make an impact in other people's lives. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like worship of God is like between you and your creator. But like that has to be something that's translatable, where it makes you humble in front of those creations around you. So where there's homelessness, where there's poverty, where there is a whole host of social ills, around us, I have to utilize my religion, as a springboard for me to actually have the motivation and the desire to help other people, I think, and I think so much of our religion is about giving out of ourselves and sharing, with others, and, from our wealth, from ourselves, from whatever. And we have, numerous ahadith and traditions that talk about the importance of, coming to the support and service of other people, and how that's a quality that is, of course, prophetic, that resembles that of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam.
Well, Thank you for that. Just to kind of close this session out with you, and given that we're going to be releasing this during, well, when this is released, it will be Ramadan. As you can see, like I've been drinking, sipping on my coffee.
Yeah,
This is my addiction,
yeah.
and this is probably the hardest thing for me to come off of during Ramadan. How do you manage? What is the some like? Talk to me about
Just
what
drink
is,
coffee early in the morning at 3 o'clock, man.
but by like 12 p.m. you're struggling. What do you do, Sheikh Faz?
All in your head, man. Tell you something.
Fasting is really, really hard. Fasting is hard for me, really hard for me.
Yeah.
But it's not supposed to be easy. I think when you go back to this idea of intentionality, it gives you like the motivation to be successful, you know? And like after 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days, your body starts to get used to it. Your mind starts to get used to it. Everything starts with where your intentionality and your mindset is. I think what's
Yeah.
really, really incredible is that, you know, after a couple of days, you realize you can do it. And that means
Yeah.
beyond the month of Ramadan, you can also do it. You can also
Yeah.
like not lie and not backbite and not cheat and not like talk like poorly about others or whatever it might be. It's supposed to be something that is translatable, the microcosm of what you really have the capacity to do throughout the year. So like this is the opportunity now. The month of Ramadan is a really blessed time. So inshallah, we're able to again utilize it as a springboard for our spiritual success for the remainder of our lives, inshallah. If God
Yeah.
gives us a long life, inshallah.
So I got two more questions for you, and you could feel free to turn them down. But I'll share my Fajr ritual for you, and then I'll ask you for yours. So I usually wake up. I don't like to eat breakfast. I'll just down a big glass of water and maybe have a date or two,
Mhm.
and then pray Fajr, read the Quran a little bit, and then go right back to sleep. What is your ritual?
My suhoor ritual. I try to wake up probably an hour and a half or two before Fajr prayers. Um, I will eat a little bit. I'm gonna make some coffee.
Yeah.
Have day. I will try to eat. You know, some sort of like a half meal or something like that. Personally, I'll try to engage in some prayers, some dua, some worship during that time. It's very very sacred. Um, have perform my Fajr prayers, recite Quran, make dua. Again, the most sacred times are right before Fajr and right after Fajr. So it's really important to utilize that. And then depending on sort of how the day goes, I'll probably sleep maybe sometime by sunrise or so, maybe before that, a little bit before. Ideally, at sunrise, because it's recommended to stay awake between Fajr and sunrise. And then, I'll be up in a little while after that because my kids don't sleep.
Right. That was going to be my next question for you. Before we move on to iftar, what's Zainab and Maryam doing during the month of Ramadan with you?
After every meal, they tell me that they're fasting from now. And then, so like after breakfast, they say, okay, from now we'll fast. And then it'll be lunchtime, and they say, okay, now it's time to break the fast. Then after breakfast, lunch, they say, okay, we're gonna start fasting. But they're only 4 and 2, so make dua for them. It's tough with kids,
Yeah.
but we'll manage the best, and hopefully they're able to see our example and our perseverance through the difficulty of the fast, and we'll try to keep them busy with Quran playing in the background and teaching them some things when we have the capacity, my wife and I, and they'll be okay, inshallah.
Inshallah. And then, so what's your iftar ritual?
Um, I mean, during these days when we're all at home, or normally.
Normally.
I mean, normally I'm in the mosque, I'm in the Islamic
Yeah.
center. I'm breaking my fast with people, praying congregational prayers, reciting Quran before that, having discussion, so on and so forth. Um, that's going to be very very different. Usually, I have lectures to give either before or after or so on.
Yeah.
So we're gonna manage this year. To doing things virtually and hopefully keeping
Yeah.
people engaged and motivated, inshallah, and of course doing the same for myself. Let's see what happens, inshallah. I don't know what's gonna happen this year.
Yeah. It'll be tricky. I'm thinking it's going to be tougher because I loved coming to work during Ramadan and getting distracted for like 10, 12 hours and then going home and then praying a little bit and then reading the Quran a little bit and then it's like, all right, time to eat. So I'm worried about this year. It's going to be tough.
Don't be worried. See it as an opportunity. We have
Yeah.
more time than ever before. We're not commuting,
Yeah.
we're still working, and so on. So you're able to hopefully dedicate. Well, hopefully we're able to collectively dedicate ourselves to more dua worship. There's a lot of stuff going on. A lot of people going through difficulties. We'll pray, keep them in our prayers as well during the course of these days, inshallah.
Inshallah. So where can we find you? So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Instagram, my podcast, Ramadan podcast, Sheikhing It Up with Sheikh Faiyaz, everywhere at Faiyaz Jaffer, Faiyazjaffer. If you have any questions, you can also reach out to me on email. You can find my email address online.
And do you have any live broadcasts coming up for?
I have a lot of live programs coming up during Ramadan. Many of them are going to be scattered, but last 15 days I'll be having things fairly regularly. A lot of things, most of them will be advertised on my Instagram at Faiyaz Jaffer, Faiyazjaffer. Programs on Zoom, Thursday night Dua Kamal, Friday night programs, Mal nights during Layal al-Qadr, Shahadat Imam Ali. We'll be doing a lot of stuff. So, and a nightly podcast as well. So please be on the lookout, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you so much, Sheikh Faiyaz. Always a pleasure speaking with you.
Likewise.
Glad you could be part of this, and sorry for all this trouble going through.
No worries, my pleasure.
I appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon, inshallah.
All right, man. Take care.